So recently I had a question about licorice root. What is it? What it's good for? Okay, well, first of all, I want to talk about the adrenal glands. You have two adrenal glands. You have an outside and an inside, okay? And they sit on top of the kidney, deep into your abdomen. Now, the outside is all glandular tissue, and it produces 3 hormones. The inside is all neurological tissue, which is interesting. So that produces things like adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, neurotransmitters, which are hormone-like. One of the hormones that's produced by the cortex, which is the outside, which, by the way, the derivation of cortex comes from the word bark because it's like the bark around a tree, will stimulate a hormone called mineralocorticoids, okay? That hormone helps balance like sodium and potassium, all right? So it actually will increase this hormone, and it'll help inhibit high levels of cortisol. And really what it's doing, it's helping balance cortisol, because if someone's in a stress state, they're going to have high cortisol. They're going to develop a condition called cortisol resistance. And that comes from the receptor for cortisol being resistant. And so now the body can't kind of connect. So then the adrenal glands make more and more and more. So licorice root can actually help inhibit high levels of cortisol. So in a stress state, you have a situation when your cortisol starts going higher and higher and higher. The problem is that your body protects itself against too much cortisol by downgrading the receptor and resisting it to the point where you get something called cortisol resistance, which then fails to create the feedback loop back to the adrenal. We have a situation we don't have a turn off or an off switch. So in this situation, we have higher and higher amounts of cortisol if you have cortisol resistance, just like insulin resistance. So licorice root can help balance this and actually lower it. Also, because cortisol acts as an anti-inflammatory, if you have cortisol resistance, you're going to get inflammation, the opposite effect, because it's not connecting into the cells. So licorice root is really good for inflammation because it actually helps balance that situation. If you have too much licorice extract, you can develop a excess amount of this hormone and you start losing potassium and retaining sodium. But again, I mean, that's only a situation where you're consuming way too much. So licorice root is really good for ulcers. It's like an anti-ulcer type remedy, which is a real chronic condition, either of the stomach or the small intestine, where there's like an open wound where it's actually bleeding. So chlorophyll is good for ulcers, but licorice root is also good as well. It's good for gastritis. How do you know if you have gastritis? Well, if you take apple cider vinegar and your stomach starts hurting and you don't have an ulcer, maybe you just have an inflammatory state of your stomach, try some licorice root. Licorice root is also good for viral hepatitis, especially the type that's autoimmune. So it's really good for the inflammation of the liver, okay? Like I said, it's anti-inflammatory. It's good for coughing, chronic coughing. And it's also an adaptogen, so it helps stress. Why? Because it helps balance out this cortisol and it helps make cortisol more effective. All right, thanks for watching.